Hello listeners, and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing you energy matters in an informal setting. In the final 2 episodes of the year, we take a look at the key events of the past 12 months, and then a look forward to the expectations for 2024. In the pod before Christmas, we will discuss Italy, Spain, and France, while in the last episode of the year, we turn our attention to Germany and the Nordic region, as well as discussing global fuel markets. I hope you enjoy the insights and the summaries from our journalists. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'm Richard Sverrisson, and joining me are several journalists from around Europe, and we will start off with Pablo Bronte, who's editor Spain. A warm welcome to you, Pablo.
Thank you, Richard.
And Enza Tedesco, who's editor Italy. A warm welcome to you too, Enza.
Hi, Richard.
Now, I thought we could start off about talking about the main issues of 2023, Pablo, and let's focus on Spain to start off with. What was it all about the Spanish exemption?
Yeah, well, market intervention has been the buzzword for the last few years here in Spain, and the Iberian exception was part of it. It was approved in 2022, and during 2023, it gradually faded, mainly because gas prices are basically lower than what we saw in 2023. In 2022. So the Iberian exception, it's a market intervention that it's not actually applied today because gas prices have already normalized. And even if the Spanish government is trying to push to get an extension of the measure, it's very unlikely to be enforced or applied because gas prices are not really expected to go up very soon, or as up as it would be required to trigger the application. So it's probably going to be under discussion in coming months as well, but it hasn't really been applied in 2023.
What was there anything of the course of the last 12 months that took you by surprise, that made you think, hey, what's going on here?
Yes, what we saw during Q2 this spring in Spain, we saw a massive green production, and we started to see many zero prices hours, and we started to see a big volume of green output curtailments from wind and solar plants, because basically we didn't have enough demand to take in that much capacity or that much green volume of production. So yes, it's starting to be a problem. Some green producers are facing a 10-15% output curtailments, depending on the zone of the country where they are. So it's a big problem, which is getting bigger and bigger. It started to be very big this year. It's probably going to worsen next year. And yes, this should start to trigger some decisions in terms of batteries, green hydrogen, because those are the main things that could prevent prices to go down to €0. So it should start to happen next year to see something to offset these green output curtailment.
Absolutely. So we're talking mainly about wholesale prices here, of course, or only about wholesale prices, of course, Pablo. But so in a sense, there's just an oversaturation. There's too much energy, renewable energy coming into the system, and there's no one who can take it. So that's, as you said, this should be a very good incentive for batteries, for green hydrogen, and ways of storing that.
Exactly. This is a problem that is going to increase in coming years. And, we got like 6 gigawatts of new green capacity last year. This year, we are probably getting another 6 gigawatts of new wind and solar capacity. And this is not going to stop anytime soon. Next year, we are facing similar numbers or even more. So, yes, the trend is unstoppable, and we're going to see more and more zero prices.
Absolutely. I think, even though it's not base load production, of course, renewable, but 6 gigawatts, is the equivalent, one could say, of 6 nuclear plants in a way, in terms of installed capacity anyway. But Enza, what about Italy? So what was happening on the other side of the Mediterranean?
Well, in Italy, a lot has happened in the energy world. I would summarize it, or at least highlight 3 main areas, which is gas, renewables, and nuclear. So in gas, no big surprises there, in the sense that Italy is known to be probably the most gas-reliant of Europe's largest economy in terms of power generation. It's half of it depends on gas. And so the government, as expected, because the new administration, which took office late last year, of Giorgia Meloni, had always said that they were going to invest in gas. And they have, actually. The Russian war in Ukraine highlighted the need to speed up renewables. And they did that in Italy. But the objective was also to be less dependent on Russian fossil fuels. They did that from Russia, but they definitely haven't moved away from gas at all. They have invested in getting more volumes. They have invested in new infrastructure. So there's been a switch in the rankings of gas suppliers to Italy. So Algeria, which was the second gas supplier to Italy, the second largest, has become the first. There's been increases in gas flows from Norway and the Netherlands, also from Azerbaijan. And with the new gas infrastructure on the LNG terminals, then we've seen also a lot of volumes coming into, LNG volumes into Italy. And in fact, the share of LNG imports has increased from 20% to almost 30% right now. So that's, gas continues to be a love story for Italy, for sure. And it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. Or at least not soon enough for the energy transition. On the renewable side, I have to say that there's been a huge improvement in the rollout of new capacity because up until 10 years ago, probably the yearly addition of new renewables capacity was about 1 giga per year, so it was very low. Last year was the first time we saw a bit of a jump. It was 3 giga. And this year, so far, up until October, there were 4.5 gigawatts of new renewables capacity. And it looks like it could end between 5 and 6. So in relative terms, obviously, that's a great progress. If you look at absolute term and what we need to get to the 2030 targets, we're still behind. So we're still short a bit. And the great headway that we've seen in renewables obviously has to do with EU policies. They have approved some emergency measures that actually this week have been extended until June 2025. So there's a streamlining in the permitting process, which is very important. And then talking about surprises for this year, I've seen a lot, like a big push for batteries in Italy. And Italy is not always, on the driver's seat in a lot of things in the energy matters. But I think with batteries, they're paving the way to really deploy a huge amount of this technology. And I was hearing Pablo with all the problems in Spain about the curtailments and stuff. And obviously batteries will be essential to avoid that kind of problems, because you would, charge a battery and have all the flexibility and more stability in the grid with that. And in Italy, they're creating very good business opportunities, because since July, batteries have been allowed to participate in the ancillary services market. I don't think that's usually the case in many of the European countries. Then they can also participate in the capacity market, which also, again, not all the countries have that. And there's going to be, we don't have a lot of details yet, but Terna, the TSO in Italy, is going to launch specific and dedicated auctions for battery next year. We don't have, again, the details, but that's probably going to cover the capital and operational costs of the battery, which is one of the main problems now for the, a larger rollout of that technology. And I just realized this week that also the interruptible contracts, the new revision that was just done a few days ago, also allows batteries to participate in those. So there are a lot of opportunities for revenue stacking, which is key for the deployment of this the technology.
It's all about the flexibility here, isn't it? And the batteries do provide that. You need to go long on flexibility. So where, Pablo, what do you expect? I mean, you've heard Enza talking about what's happening in Italy, and there has been progress made in batteries and the battery sector there. What do you expect next year in Spain? Do you think this could be speeded up, that potentially you could have the same kind of development as you're seeing in Italy already?
Yes, we are very likely to see some some progress there. There's new regulation coming next year, specifically for batteries, and we will see if that's enough to build a business case for batteries. But this is something that has been very much anticipated from the whole industry, and it's going to be key to see if batteries are really feasible as a solution here in Spain. Moreover, we are going to have a new capacity mechanism in place probably next year as well. So this is going to help not only CCGTs and gas-fired plants. They have been struggling for a while, so Spain definitely needs those CCGTs as a backup. But
so that'll be the combined cycle gas turbines, for those who aren't familiar with that abbreviation. Absolutely, yeah. To provide that base load, yes. If you want, Pablo.
Exactly,
yeah.
Yes. The gas-fired plants are basically the gas-fired plants are necessary for the gas for the whole country to keep the lights on, but the capacity mechanism is not only going to help gas-fired plants, it's also going to help batteries. The new mechanism is supposed to be technology neutral, meaning that batteries are also likely to find some revenues from those capacity markets. So it's going to be a very interesting year here in Spain to see if the batteries are finally getting to the market.
What are the worries? Why could it not be feasible, Pablo? Why couldn't it? What makes? Is there something about the characteristics of the Spanish market that makes it more unviable than maybe in others?
Well, it's all about the money, as everyone.
Of course, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yes, right now there is no business case for batteries because the investment required is too high, and the revenues that they could get from estimated prices for coming years are not so high. Prices are very likely to go down if gas prices go down. So yes, with low power prices, there is of course a business case for batteries to take in those to take power when prices are low, and then producing or delivering power when prices are a bit up. But there's a big question mark on how the market is going to evolve in the coming years with so much green capacity coming online. So there is no clarity yet for investors to take those big investment decisions. There has been no correct regulation in place until now. And well, it's basically a matter of getting enough money, and market conditions are not enough to get enough money to take an investment decision about batteries.
What's happening on the demand side, Pablo? Is there any moves to involve the demand side more in these kind of decisions? I mean, if you're kind of, saturated with, renewable capacity, having to curtail, could you maybe also incentivize large industry to reduce, or is that the time you want them to consume as much as possible?
Yes, we have some mechanisms around demand flexibility in place here in Spain. The problem is that the energy price crisis that we saw in 2022 has pushed companies to make some big cuts in energy demand. Some processes have been stopped, and also some efficiencies have been deployed. But the biggest change has been rooftop solar. So big companies now are investing a lot of money into rooftop solar, which is reducing the overall demand, which is reducing the business case for batteries. So it's a very complex game where many drivers are in place. And yes, flexibility of demand will play a bigger role in the coming years. But then again, some of the demand that was eroded during the crisis will never come back, of course. And yes, due to efficiencies, due to industries shutting down, but also due to rooftop solar. So that's another big issue here.
Excellent. So Enza, if I can turn to you, and what do you think will be the big stories of 2024?
Well, like I said, gas is not going away for Italy. So we are going to see a little bit of the same. I think it's a continuation of these huge investments. Also because we need to clarify something. Besides the need of Italy to diversify supply and move away from Russian gas, Italy has also this grandiose plan of becoming the natural gas hub for the continent under the Piano Mattei that has been dubbed by Giorgia Meloni. They want to basically become a supplier for the rest of Europe. The problem is, I've spoken to several analysts, and the problem is that Italy right now, at least, is not. It doesn't have adequate infrastructure to move huge quantities of gas from south to north, which is where most of the gas Italy is getting comes from Algeria, Libya, or even Azerbaijan. So there's a big bottleneck in the center of Italy for the gas pipeline, because traditionally we always had the gas flows, or at least the largest gas flows, coming from the north to the south. So right now we have inverted the flows, and that's creating a bottleneck problem. The TSO SNAM has planned an expansion of those pipelines there, but it's going to take some time. And then you have obviously to guarantee a certain amount of volumes for domestic consumption, and then the extra you'll be able to export, if anything. We've seen a little bit of sample of that. In August and September, we've seen Italy re-exporting to Austria and Slovenia some of its gas. But again, it's not sustainable over time. So that's on one side. The other thing I see is happening next year, obviously, it's another push for renewables. Again, like I said, we just saw that the EU ministers have approved, have extended the emergency measures to simplify, streamline, speed up the authorization process for renewables, and that's definitely going to help to continue to add new green capacity. Although I have to say the renewables developers have been faced with a lot of challenges in Italy because a lot of taxes and increases in cost of capital, of course, and the land prices. I mean, there are a lot of things going on. But despite that, I do expect green capacity in Italy to continue to grow. Hopefully even more than this year. And we're definitely going to hear more about nuclear because Giorgia Meloni's government is really keen on reviving this technology. So probably we'll see more on that, and especially on the small modular nuclear reactors, which seems to be the more approachable technology and probably even to deploy faster in some way.
Enza, Pablo, thank you very much. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor all the stories you put out on Montel News, all the excellent reporting that will continue into 2024. So thanks once again.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
We continue our look at the main issues of 2023 and also with the outlook for 2024 in France. So joining me are Muriel Boselli, journalist France. Welcome to you, Muriel.
Thank you. Hello, Richard.
And Chris Eales, editor France. Hello, Christopher.
Bonjour.
What, in your view, were the main issues in this year so far?
Well, Richard, I think what was the most shocking was this winter stress that we had over power supply. Disaster was literally averted this winter. All indicators were pointing to a major shortfall in power supply. Many of EDF's 56 reactors were shut down due to stress corrosion, a phenomenon which caused nuclear production to fall to its lowest level in 2022 since records began.
But just to be clear, this was in the first quarter of this year, right? This,
we're talking about the winter.
Yeah, so...
So we had incredibly low production in 2022, which progressively recovered in 2023. But the winter was very stressed. There was an amazing amount of publicity calling on French people to reduce consumption. We were expecting power cuts for the first time, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen because we had a mild winter, because French people were very obedient. They reduced their consumption. People were fearful. So yes, we came close, but we didn't crash.
Yeah, and the lights didn't go out. But where are we now, Chris? I mean, is the situation much improved?
Well, it's a completely different situation going into this winter. I think it's something like 6 gigawatts more nuclear availability than we had at the same time last year. So there are no fears of power cuts this winter. Demand is still very low because structurally demand has been hit. So it's a very, very different picture. However, it's worth saying that last winter France only kept the lights on because it imported power from its neighbours, and prices were very high. It won't be anything like that this year.
And France has returned to being an exporter.
France has returned to being an exporter. Its historical role, what was fascinating about the corrosion was that it turned France into a net power importer, almost entirely, for the first time ever, right across the year almost. So it showed the weakness of nuclear, in fact, and the problem of having all your eggs in one basket, if you like. Nuclear accounts for an enormous amount of 70% or something of France's power mix.
So Muriel, what were the other issues? I mean, obviously, maybe it was luck. I mean, in a sense, it was because the winter was very mild. Had the winter really hit hard, it would have been a different situation completely. But what were the other issues?
I think this crisis became the basis for France to prove to the public that something was needed in terms of building more ENRs and going forward with new nuclear build. They used it as a kind of communication tool. The French government introduced legislation earlier this year to speed up both construction of nuclear reactors and renewable energy. Just switching to renewable energy, it's important to note that France has failed a European target to reach 23% of renewable energy in its final energy consumption by 2020. We still haven't reached that. We're at about 19%. There's been a lot of resistance among the public and local politicians, and there's a huge lobby, which is partly nuclear, that fights systematically against ENR projects. So the French government is trying to push in both directions at once, nuclear and renewable energy. So, as I said, the crisis, it was a basis for them to move forward on that.
So this has driven forward the new build agenda here. But at the same time, it's also driving forward renewables build, as in offshore wind, potentially onshore wind and solar as well? Or is that kind of stopping up?
No, they are focusing on solar and offshore wind power. They've understood that onshore wind power the progress will be limited because there's legal actions against every single project. So that's complicated, and so far you can go with that. They are moving forward with offshore wind power. They're aiming for a massive 10 gigawatt tender from 2025 until 2027. And they're also planning differently. Before, France used to organize tenders, and then people would complain and oppose the results. Now they're trying to reverse the method by planning with local actors where farms should be built and going ahead once there's an agreement. France is trying to improve its methodology to implement wind farms.
But we also saw this year, Chris, didn't we, the spat between Germany and France. So about nuclear and the CFDs for nuclear. Has that kind of been resolved? Is that kind of have we moved forward beyond that?
Well, I mean, there was an agreement. There has been an agreement at the European level on market reform. So, in a sense, they have been able to, at least they are able to work together. However, there is a major rift between France and Germany that still exists on a fundamental level, with one country opposed to nuclear and the other very much in favor of it. And that does raise questions going forward. How will this be resolved? What does it mean for EDF's extremely ambitious plans to build nuclear reactors all over Europe? I mean, we had the CEO of EDF, Luc Rémont, saying that he wanted to build a new reactor every year between now and 2050. If you have such a rift at the heart of Europe, that causes problems. But clearly a rift between France and Germany, it hasn't healed, and it's a fundamental disagreement.
And could paper over the cracks as well. So, Muriel, what's your view here?
I think the fact that France scrapped the CFD, the option for CFDs, which it won at the European level, could jeopardize France's ability to maneuver within Europe in the next few months or years when it will need to.
Chris, do you have something to add, Dan?
Well, no, just that we're talking about the reform of the French power market, the way that nuclear is going to be, the sale of EDF's nuclear power, how that's going to be regulated. And France came up with this agreement between the state and EDF of how they're going to do that, and this is this nuclear tax on wholesale market sales. So basically, they've got rid of regulation. They're now just going to tax. It's a market device. Essentially, they've turned to the market, quite ironically, actually. That is where and France went into this discussion pushing for a CFD, which would have given them some kind of safety net, if you like, because a CFD has a floor price as well as a ceiling price, whereas the new French mechanism will only have a ceiling price. So it's possible, and we have reported this actually, that this reform it may not stay as it is. It might start out as a tax, but if power prices fall, when some people think they will, then France may well want to change this regulation again and maybe introduce something more along the lines of the CFD.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I think, that was obviously a big part of the discussion this year. But if we then move into 2024, what can we expect there, Muriel?
So on the table, there will be obviously nuclear regulation needs to be voted. It's still not acted, so it should come into practice from the 1st of January 2026 and replace ARENH, our old system, under which EDF was selling 100 terawatt-hours to its rivals for 42 euros. Suppliers could be under duress from that system, and smaller suppliers could not have the financial ability to cope with the new system. The old ARENH system was, providing them with cheap nuclear, and it was an easy way of operating. So now that's going to be an issue when the nuclear regulation comes into force. I think next year we'll also see there'll be a lot of noise around the Flamanville startup. This is the showcase for France. It's EPR showcase. So if it's not in time, if the calendar is not respected, it's 12-year. Just a reminder, it's 12-year late. It's gone from 3 billion to 20 billion in cost. So this is absolutely massive. So there is a political urge for France to start up with its Flamanville project this year. If it doesn't, it could threaten the other project and the possibility for EDF to sell other projects elsewhere in Europe.
And I think April next year will mark the 20-year anniversary of the announcement of the Olkiluoto launch in Finland, and that's only just came online this year. So that's quite astonishing in the sense of the time frame involved there. But it still needs to be approved at EU level, doesn't it? The replacement to ARENH.
We reported this year that, as it stands, this tax, because there isn't a floor which could be viewed as state aid. There are some lawyers who've said, well, this will actually ease its way through the EC, but it's not. That has to be that. I understand that it still has to be approved. But we're talking about 2026, by the way, though. On the Flamanville issue, there are challenges. There are challenges. There are technical challenges. They have to replace the lid 12 months after it starts up. There are questions about corroded fuel rods that need to be addressed, which is keeping, earlier this year, kept the EPR in Taishan offline. There are potentially similar issues, or at least they have to be monitored. So there are challenges.
What's the due start date at the moment?
Well, it's the middle of the year when they will start the reactor.
So mid-24.
That was what they're saying, the latest, and that it would then gradually climb up to full capacity by the end of the year, which seems to be quite ambitious, given that earlier messages from the French regulator was it wouldn't reach full capacity until 2028. So it's something that we're looking at, actually.
Okay, that seems to be quite an extended startup time schedule there. And so what else can we expect to see on happening next year?
The French government is planning to merge its nuclear safety authority, ASN, with its technical arm, IRSN. So this move is presented by the government to improve efficiency and speed up process in the decisions surrounding nuclear. There's going to be a lot of decisions to be made on the nuclear safety aspect. There's going to be the EPR design to approve. There's the so-called grand carénage. It's the upgrade of French nuclear plants. There's the small modular reactors. The technologies will have to be looked at very closely. This is a huge amount of work. So the French government wants to regroup all of the nuclear know-how on the safety level, but there's a huge amount of opposition because the IRSN, so the technical arm, has always been independent and has released its own so-called avis. That's when its opinion, its recommendations. So it's very transparent. The RSN at the moment says that this is what is needed in terms of safety, and then the ASN, which decides on the basis of an opinion which is public. So the French government has always said that we had the most amazing safety system in the world. They've praised that system, and it's been one of the reasons why, the public accepted so much nuclear in France. It's because of that system. So now they're putting it into question, and we'll see whether the parliament gives its green light for this merger. I think it could be difficult. We'll see, but it's going to be absolutely key.
Some would say centralising those authorities would provide better safety or better safety systems.
The critics say that this new system will be less critical on safety, and the French industry will be able to move faster on rolling out decisions, nuclear decisions, which for some is going to be a threat to safety.
That's of course a major concern, absolutely, and I'm sure parliamentarians will view it quite similarly. Chris, if I can just round off with you in terms of the big issues on the table in 2024, what do you see as the key areas which we us at Montel News will be following?
Well, I mean, all the things that Muriel has mentioned, of course, the potential changes to the regulation is extremely important for EDF's finances. I mean, we know that normally Aaron will last until 2026, but there's going to be more discussion about that, much more discussion. There's enormous doubt about this plan to basically to be able to sell their nuclear output. An average of 70 euros is extremely ambitious, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about that, and we'll be following that very, very closely because it means so much to EDF. They lost billions and billions of euros as a result of having to sell their nuclear power at 40 euros. And they need this money to build these reactors. The push, the drive, there's a nuclear renaissance, apparently, according to those proponents of nuclear power. So this is key, and aligned to that, as you said, the startup of Flamanville is also extremely important because, they haven't been able to do this. They have lost so much of the know-how, according to EDF itself, former CEOs saying that they've lost the knack of it. They don't know how to build nuclear power plants anymore. It's only the Russians and the Chinese who might be able to do it. So we're going to see more and more of this drive for nuclear. It's very clear that France has changed its position. Macron has U-turned, and what we didn't mention is that this year the nuclear cut, Holland's idea, the socialist idea of cutting back on nuclear use has finally been thrown out of the window. There is no cap on nuclear power output.
Well, at least it's public
capacity.
now. Yeah.
Now it's clear. So these are some of the key issues going forward. The other thing is that the emphasis is very much on nuclear, and so that is potentially to the detriment of renewables. And we've seen Greenpeace report in mid-December saying that France's targets to hit net zero through renewable use are just too low, far too low, and compared to neighbours, 2 or 3 times too low. There's a great problem. France is under pressure wasn't even able to meet its 2020 target. It faces a 500 million sanction from the EU for failing to meet these targets. It doesn't want to pay that money, and it doesn't want to buy the rights to buy statistical renewables. It doesn't want to do that. So there's a real issue about whether France can do both, can boost nuclear, can boost renewables.
And if you look at the neighbours, I mean, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, they're up to upwards of 6 gigawatts of new green capacity coming online, and that's not happening in France, is it?
No, that isn't happening, despite these very ambitious targets. And then, the other issue we'll be looking at will be also questions of competition in France. The rival suppliers of EDF are not very happy with this idea of turning to the market to regulate the sale of nuclear, or to tax the sale of nuclear. There's talk of consolidation, more consolidation in the market, companies going under, rival suppliers going under, increasing the dominance of EDF. It's if we're going backwards in some way.
There'll certainly be a lot to follow, and it'll all be covered, I know, by you two and your colleagues here in France. So thank you very much for joining the Montel Weekly Podcast.
Thank you.
Merci.